Hi guys, welcome to another Divi theme video. This is Jamie from System22 and webdesignandtechtips.com. Well, today we're going to take you through the Divi contact form. We're going to show you everything you need to know about it, show you how to set it up, get everything running. So let's add a new page. We'll give it a title, and of course we'll use the Divi builder. Now Divi has a lot of pre-made layouts you can use. And also you can build with AI, but today we're going to build from scratch. So I'm going to hit the start building. I'm going to put a single column in mine. Divi comes with all these modules as standard, everything you need to build just about any kind of site. We're going to go down and we're going to add a contact form. By default, it puts in a form with 3 fields. As you can see here, name, email, message. To delete a field, just hit the trash can. To add a new field, hit the plus. If you do something you don't like what you've done, hit Control Z and it'll undo it for you and it'll have that back. Now you can add a new field very easily by hitting the little button right here. You can give your field a name and a title. Let's call this one subject. Field ID, and we'll use the same for the actual title. And I'll explain a little more about field IDs later on. You can use that to dictate how your message is received. As you can see, it's added it right there. In the field options, we've got the type of field. This is an input field because it's just for them to tell us what the subject's about. You can choose whether it's an email field. They've got to put an email address in. It'll get flagged if they don't put a correct email. Text area is fine. They can put text but unlimited text. You can use checkboxes, radio buttons and drop downs, and we'll go through these in a little while. I'm going to leave this on an input field. You can give it a minimum length or a maximum length of characters. If you leave it on 0, they can type in as few or as many as you want. Allow symbols. You can stop them from putting certain things in by only allowing letters, only allowing numbers, and only allowing numbers and letters. If you make it a required field, I'm sure you know, they need to fill it in before they can send off the form. Now we'll come back to conditional logic in a little while and show you how to add conditional logic to your form. But for this particular one, I don't need that. We don't need to link it anywhere. And you can change the background color if you want to. Don't need to link it anywhere. And I don't want to change the background. But I would like to put it perhaps after the name and the email address up here. So once you're happy with what you've got there, save the changes. Takes you back to the main settings here. To move it, just left click, move it up to where you want it. I actually want it under the email there. Now you may have noticed the name and the email are only sort of 50% width, and the rest of these are full width, taking up the full amount available to them. If you want to change that, click on the one you want to change. Let's go into our name, hit the little cog there. If we go over to design and layout, we can make it full width. As you can see, that's made that full width. And let's do the same for the email. We'll save our changes. Go into the email the same way, over to design, layout, and we'll make that full width too. Fantastic. Okay, once you're actually in the field, you can design it pretty much any way you want. If you go into the fields, you can choose a background color, a text color, field focus background color, that means when they click on it, and a field focus text color. As well as that, you can add any font you want. Divi's got a crazy amount of fonts. Just left click on it, it'll open this up for you. To audition a font, roll over it. It'll give you an example of that particular font. I'm going to leave mine on the default today. And of course, you can decide, depending on the font, whether you want it regular, semi-bold, bold, ultra bold, light, whatever works for you. We can italicize. We're working on this one right here. Double capitals, large and small capitals, underline, and strike through if you want to. And you can mix and match plenty of these. Don't want any of these. I'm going to leave mine just as it is. You can decide whether you want the field text alignment middle, right. Justified will put it back on the left, but if it's a long title, it will try and stretch it out. I'm going to leave mine on the left, And of course you can change your font text size to whatever you want, bigger, smaller, etc. And again, if you don't like what you've done, select it, delete it, it'll go back to how it was for you. Letter spacing, that's pretty obvious. It'll stretch those letters out for you. Some situations, that's great. Again, I'm going to put mine back to how it was. Field line height, that's actually the space below it. So if I increase it, you'll see it makes that field bigger. Decrease it, it'll make it skinnier. Again, I'm going to leave mine on the default. You can use various text shadows if you want to. For me, text shadows on small text makes it look kind of blurry. Works really well on larger text. To have none, just hit the stop symbol there. Now we've got a text field underneath where you can just align stuff. We've covered that already. Sizing wise, you can decide how much of the width it takes up. So we've got contact form within a row at the moment. The row stops here and here. If we want it to not take up all of that space, we can roll it down. It's got a percentage value. Can't really see what I'm doing there. That field's actually gone down. If I put it back to how it was and do that again, you can roll it down till it's the size that you want it. You can give it a max width if you need to, and once you've done that, you can align it how you want, in the middle, to the right, to the left. Again, I'm going to leave mine how it is. It's a percentage. You can do a pixel value if you want to. Let's put in perhaps 400 pixels. Just put px on the end. And it'll always be 400 pixels wide, whether it's on desktop, tablet or mobile. Whereas if you use a percentage, it'll be 50% of the actual screen size, depending on the size there. So a small screen, it's going to look smaller. Bigger screen, it's going to look bigger. You can also do VW for viewable width. I'm going to leave it on the default once again. Minimum height, you can set it that it can't get smaller than regular height. Regular height, if we make that, well, let's say 70 pixels, I think that'll make it a bit bigger. Let's made it bigger. It will always stay at that height. Max height, you can say, well, I don't want it getting bigger than 70 pixels, whatever it is, and it can never get bigger than that on any device. Spacing, we've got underneath here. You can decide how much padding you want. If I add 50 pixels padding to the top, just put in the 50, it'll put in the pixels. It just pushes it down by 50 extra there. If we hit the chain, it'll do the same on the bottom. And again, if you don't like it, take it away. And we'll do the same for the left and right. It's going to push it in a little bit, hit the chain, it'll pull it in from the other side a little bit. And this is the padding between the end of our little field here and the beginning of the row, or the end of the row right there, beginning of the row right here. Again, let's just delete those. Now margin, similar but not the same as padding. If I put 50 pixels margin on the top, it's going to look like it's doing the same thing. But if I delete that and put a 0 on the bottom, it's going to take away any gap that we've got at the bottom there. I've got a whole video on difference between margin and padding. Have a look at that if it confuses you. You can use margins for negative value as well to stack things on top of each other, which is not a good idea for a contact form, but just to show you, if I put a negative margin on the top, this will pull this up. Let's give it negative 70 pixels. And it's pulled that one on top of the other one. Not so good for this, but for other modules, it's a great thing to know. Of course, you can add a border to your field if you want to. Remember, we're working on the email. If you want to give it rounded corners, by default, that will be highlighted. So it'll do all four at once. To give it rounded corners, let's say give it 50 pixels. We've got nice rounded corners there. If you want to make crazy shapes, let's just take that back to how it was. You can uncheck that and you can do individual sides. Put 25 on that one, 5 on that one, 25 on that one, and let's just put 5 on that one. And you've got crazy little shapes going on. Again, if you want to get rid of it, just highlight the chain, delete it, go back to how it was. And it's nice quite often to have small corners with a lower pixel value, like perhaps 8 pixels. We'll give it subtle corners like that. Great. Well, if you actually want to give it a border itself, you can give it a border all around here by just rolling down, input border width here. That's added a border, and of course you can make it any color that you want. Make it larger if you need to. And they've got several types of border: solid, dashed, dotted, doubled, etc. I'm going to leave it on solid. I'm actually going to take that away. To take it away, select it, border width, take it away. Fantastic. If we roll down a bit more, we've got some box shadow, which will add a shadow around our little field there. And you've got your all round, offset, just on the bottom, hard all round, inset, which will give it a border inside, and inset to the left. And with these, you can also use colors to make them sort of glow. And this is better on a dark background. You can give it a background color, and you can go into the color. And this is common to all color fields. If you click on the color field, you'll see this variegated slider here. If you take the opacity down, it takes it from a hard color. It starts showing some of the background through it right there. I really don't want a box shadow on mine, but it is an option, and you can style these things and get some fantastic things going. Not going to use filters on this. You can change the hue and things like that. Give it a sepia. But for me, it's not really a good thing for contact forms, but that's entirely up to you. Don't need to use any transform. We've got scale, translate, which is move, rotate, which is obviously rotate, skew, and transform origin, which is the point at which you rotate something. And again, none of this is really good for contact forms. So let's just save that, and we'll go back out to the main contact form settings. And all those settings that we've just gone through in design are available in the main. So if you do it in the main one, let's go down to border. Let's give it 50 pixels all round. As you can see, it'll do all of those for you. So you can do each field individually, or you can do them all here. And just to show you a bit more of the input, if we go into the fields here, let's change the background color perhaps to a light blue, just for an example. Fields text color we can perhaps make white. Focus is when they click on it, we'll give it a different color. Perhaps use that crazy green. Now if I click on a field, you'll see it changes to that green color. And a focus text color, again, I leave on the white. And again, if you don't like what you've done, just click on whatever color and delete what's in there. It'll go back to the original for you. Fantastic. Well, there's the little design elements. We've covered pretty much all of that. Let's add some more fields, and then we'll send this form off. Let's go back to our content now. Let's add a new field. Let's do a drop down. I'm just going to call this drop down. Control C to copy. I'm going to use the same thing for the title. I'm going to go into the field options. This time, let's use a drop down. I'm skipping over email because we've got one of those up there. Text area, we've got a text area right here. And we'll come back to checkboxes and radio buttons in a minute. I'm going to select a drop down, and we'll give it a few options. We'll say red. Let's add a new one. Yellow. And green. And again, you can make these required fields. I'm going to turn that off for my drop downs. And again, I'll show you some conditional logic in a little while. Let's just save this. Back to our main field settings. I'm going to put that drop down under the subject. There it is right there. just save our contact form. Save draft or publish if you're ready. Exit the Visual Builder. We've got a little arrow there. When they click on it, it's going to give those options right there. And they've selected red, selected yellow, selected green. Great. Let's go back in there. And we'll go back into our form. Let's add a new field. This time, let's use some radio buttons. And you can call it anything you want. I'm just using radio for convenience. Make sure it makes sense to you. There's our little radio right there. Let's have a look at our field options. Obviously, I'm going to select the radio buttons here. Now, radio buttons will only let you select one or the other. So again, let's do the same. And with radio buttons here, let's just move it up to where we want it, perhaps under the drop down there. They can only select one or the other. If I quickly save this, you'll see they can only select one of those three, or however many options you give them up there. Okay, well, let's add a few checkboxes. I'm going to go back in here. We'll add a new field. This one I'm going to call check. We're going to go into the field options. Funnily enough, I'm going to use checkboxes for this. And again, let's use our same red, yellow, green. Now let's move this over here. There they are on the bottom there. Fantastic. And with checkboxes rather than radio buttons, they can select all of these, one of them, two of them, however many they want. So let's just save this. We'll move this up next to our radio buttons perhaps. Now let's put these next door. And you know how to do that. I'm going to make my radio buttons. I'm going to go into my radio buttons. I'm going to go over to design. Layout wise, I'm going to turn that off. Now I'm going to go into my check marks, checkboxes, design, layout, make full width. And they put them next door to each other. Fantastic. Well, let's discuss a bit of conditional logic. Now I'll use the radio buttons for that. Conditional logic is, you can say something like, if they select red, take them to this field. If they select yellow, take them to this field, or generate another field. And let's do that. So I'm going to add a new field. I'm going to say, do you like red apples? This is a very simple example like this. Field options, let's make this a radio button too, and we'll just say yes or no. Yes. No. But we don't want them to see this unless they select red up here. So under the field options, here's our conditional logic. I'm going to enable it. I'm going to say, for the radio, if it equals red, that's great. And you can do equals, you can does not equal, is greater than, is less than, contains, does not contain, is empty. And you can have various parameters. Like I say, I'm keeping this very simple. And we'll do a similar thing for yellow and green. So let's just save this. Back into the main fields again. I want to move this. I'm just going to call this one red in the ID. I forgot to give it an ID just now, just so I know what it is. We'll go back up. Let's move that under our radio buttons. Now we can see it on the back end, but you won't see it on the front end unless they select the red up there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this one, go into the next one, I'm going to call it yellow. And let's say, do you like bananas? Field options we've already got, but the conditional logic for this one wants to be equals yellow, or whatever parameters you decide for yours. And funnily enough, we're going to go back in there. I'm going to duplicate that one again. Going to go into this one. And we'll say green apples. And these sort of things are great for getting information about your clients. You know, you can say, do you like PCs? You can go to 1. Do you prefer this, that, and the other? You can click on that and you can keep having conditional logics going down so you can get a real idea of what your clients or whatever it is you're trying to find out. You can get some really good information by doing this. And again, we're going to go into the conditional logic. We're going to change this to green. And just to demonstrate this, save the main contact form settings, save draft, exit the visual builder. Now the first thing you're going to notice is the red, yellow and green are not there. But if we go down, we select red, you'll see that's appeared. And I made them 50% so they can fill out their area a bit more. If they select yellow, do you like bananas? That one's appeared. If they select green, it should say, do you like green apples? And that's a basic overview of how conditional logic works. Great. Well, let's go back in there. I'll show you how to configure this, style the button, do the capture, and we'll send it off. Make sure it's going to work. So we enable the visual builder. We'll go down back into our form. Okay, well, we've got all our fields here. You can give it a title if you want. As you can see, that appears on the top. And if you want to style it, just roll over it, click the pencil, and this is common to all of these. If you click the little pencil icon attached to them, it'll take you straight to the design tab for that particular item. Let's go into my contact form, which is the title. You can make it an H1, H2, whatever you need. Obviously change the font if you want to. Let's capitalize it and perhaps pop it in the middle. And a little bit more separation, perhaps we can change the line height to give it a bit more space. There we go. And if we make it a lot bigger, say 50 pixels or 40 pixels or something like that, that's when the actual text shadow starts to look a little bit better, when it's large like that. Like I say, for small text, to me that makes things look blurry, but that's entirely up to you. Great. Well, let's go back to our content now. We've got all of our fields. In the text, as I said earlier, you can put a title in. Success message, that's very important to let people know that the form's actually been sent. So put in whatever message you want to happen there. If you don't want the submit button to say submit, you want it to say something else, like message sent or send or whatever, you can just put in what you want there. And again, if you don't like what you've done, you can delete it. It'll go back to the generic submit. That's pretty much what I use. Down below, here's the important part, the email address that you want to have this sent to. So it's you at your email.com. Now the message pattern. This is the way you actually receive the message. What I'll do is I'll send one off before I show you this, and we'll take a look at it, and then we'll set the message pattern, which is how these fields are received. If you want to, when they hit the submit, you can redirect them to a different page or anywhere on the web you want by enabling this and putting the URL you want to send them in there. But I'm going to leave mine just with a success message. Down at the bottom here, we've got a little reCAPTCHA, spam protection. You can use a third-party service such as Google reCAPTCHA, but you need an API key to set that one up. But basic capture, if you don't want it, you just take that off like that. If you are having trouble with a lot of spam, which is quite often the case nowadays with bots and AI and what have you, there's some great third-party services out there. Very reasonable. I use one that's actually called Clean Talk. I think it's about $8 a year, and they'll capture most of that for you. And they stop a lot of this junk coming through. But Have a little basic capture, it doesn't hurt. It'll give them a sum each time. If they don't complete that sum, it'll submit it. But like I say, AI is kind of getting around a lot of this lately. Don't need a link. If you want to put a background in, let's just put a background in for fun. Let's go in here. Perhaps give it a light grey background. Now you can see that everything's butted up against the side. You can change that by going into design, down to spacing, which is always where we'll find padding. Let's give it, say, 30 pixels all around. Just put 30 in, it'll put in the pixels. That's the top. Hit the chain, will do the bottom. And let's do the same for left and right. And that's giving it some breathing space all around there. 30 pixels there, 30 pixels top, 30 pixels bottom. Fantastic. Now while we're in here, we might want to style that submit button, make it a little bit more interesting. If we roll up, here's the button. Use custom styles for button. You can make the text size bigger or smaller. I'm fine with it how it is. Button text color, let's make it white perhaps. Button background, let's make it blue. I don't really like that white border, so let's take that away, or let's make the border the same color blue. Now here's a little trick that's common to all Divi modules with all colors. If you roll up over the dark writing, you'll see some little icons appear. If there's a little arrow just like this, you've got two settings. You've got a desktop tab when the mouse is not on it, we'll keep it blue. And you've got a hover tab where you can have a completely different value. And you can use gradients, and you can also use images for this if you want to. So when they hover over it, let's turn it purple perhaps. But we still got that blue border. So we can do exactly the same thing with the border. Border color. Make sure you hover over the thing you want to adjust. Just because we've got it open up here doesn't mean it'll change it for our border. So go into the border, we'll hit that little arrow one more time. Desktop, we're going to keep it blue. Hover. We'll turn it the same color, the purple, and we've got a nice solid purple button there. You can change the fonts, the border radius. We did that before. If you wanted a rounded button, we demoed that with our fields. You can change the font weight, capital, and what have you. When we roll over this, you may notice there's a little icon there. You can choose whatever icon you want. And there's a lot of them. Let's put a search in for a send perhaps. And let's use this one. Now when I hover over, you can see it's got that little thing there. You can turn that off if you don't want to have an icon. If we switch that off, when I hover, it won't have an icon, which I quite often use. Or if you want to show it at all times, we can switch it back on. Roll down a little bit. Only show icon on hover for button. We can switch that from yes to no. And you'll see the icon all the time. If you don't want it on the right, you can pop it on the left. And again, you can use text shadow for buttons. That's actually not a bad idea. It just makes that text stand out just a little bit more on that button. I quite often use this. But of course, that's entirely up to you. Now, button margin and button padding. Padding is going to make this button deeper or wider. For instance, if I put 20 pixels on the top, see it makes that button deeper on the top. Hit the chain, it'll do the bottom as well. Don't like what you've done, get rid of it. Left and right, obviously, it's going to make it wider. I quite like that. But what I'm going to do for mine, I'm going to take that icon away. Let's roll down a little bit more. And we got button box shadow. And again, we've got the same settings. Just gives it that slight 3D effect there. Or if you want to, you can have an inset color. Fairly subtle, but you can change it around. I quite often use that one just on the bottom. Makes it look like it's lifted a little bit. Great, well we're pretty much there. We're almost ready to send this thing off. Don't really want to use anything else there. We've got all the fields that we want. Great. Well, let's save our changes. Let's save our changes. Make sure we save the page changes. Save draft or publish if you're ready. And exit the Visual Builder. And let's fill this thing out. And we'll say form test. Drop down, let's select red perhaps. Radio buttons, let's say yellow. Do like bananas, yes. And on our checkbox, we'll check green. And we'll say message test. 8 plus 6 is 14. Let's submit our form. Form sent successfully. And let's go check it out. And here we are. Here's that message come through. It's from me. Message is test. Subject is form test. Drop down. We chose red. For the radio button we chose yellow. And for the question was, do you like bananas? You said yes. And the check mark was green. Now we can change the way this turns up. If I go back to my form now, let's enable the Visual Builder. We'll go back into this form. Let's say we want to have email, subject, then the name. Don't want the drop down. Do want the radio. And we'll have it red, yellow and green. Don't want the checkboxes. We can do that in the email tab in the message pattern. So all we need to do is put double percentage signs. In fact, we'll put 4 of them in. 1, 2, 3, 4. In between, let's say we want the email first, and we're using the field IDs for this. So if we look at the email, field ID is just email. Go back down to where we were. In between the percentage signs, we've got 2 either side. We'll put the field ID. So I just want the email. Let's just have the subject. I think that was subject. I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to drop down, change email to subject. And don't want the drop down. We will have the radio. Again, that was radio, wasn't it? Let's drop down one more. It's important you get the field ID correct for these. And we'll have red, yellow and green just in case they check any of those. I don't want the check marks. So we'll drop down one more. 1, 2, 3 for red, yellow and green. And we'll have the text area. Just make sure what that was, which was just message right there. So we'll drop down one more. And we'll say message. So when they send this off now, I should just have the email, subject, radio buttons and the answers and the message itself. Let's try that. I'm going to save it, save our page changes, and we'll exit the Visual Builder. We'll fill this out again. And 3 and 8 is 11. Let's hit the submit. Whoops, forgot to fill out this form here. As you can see, it's flagged it. Form sent successfully. Let's go back to the email client. There's our old message. Here's our new message. And we've just got the email address, the subject, the radio check, yes I do like it, and test email number 2, which was a subject field. So you see, with that you can configure it, just refresh, to send the fields in any order you want, depending on how you want to receive them. So there we go guys, here's an overview of the Divi contact form. One of the things you can't do with it is add an attachment, and that's a shame, but we've got plenty of videos on how to add a form with file upload. and I'll put a link to one of those down below this video. So I hope you've enjoyed this today and found it useful. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, ring the bell, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget, if you have any questions, pop them down below the video. I'll do my best to answer them for you or make a little demo video like this one. Once again, this has been Jamie from System22 and webdesignandtechtips.com. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.